welcome back. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to check out another one of my videos. And in today's video, we are continuing on with Kate's Giving and having another video. Today's video is going to be about fall palettes, but this time it's going to be all about fall palettes that I have in my collection that are no longer available. They were limited edition, or they're discontinued now, or the brand has shut down, that type of thing, but they're still fantastic fall palettes. And when I was doing my top 10 fall palettes for 2022, which I'll leave that video linked up here, I was going over it and I was like, man, so many of these palettes you can't get anymore. And sometimes people find that annoying if they go to click on a video for recommendations for seasonal palettes and they can't get half of the palettes that I recommend. So I decided to do a video solely dedicated to some of my favorite fall palettes that just, they're not available anymore. They're discontinued. So that is what this video is all about. So with that intro out of the way, let's go ahead and just jump right into talking about my favorite discontinued fall theme palettes. All right, I have quite the stack, so let's just dive right in. This is going in no particular order, just all of these you just can't get anymore. But anyway, first up is going to be Milk Cosmetics Gemini palette. This palette right here is definitely fall in my eyes. It's got a very nice color story of that green, grungy, just gorgeous tones, and then also just the beautiful warm tones when it comes to neutral browns. I really love these tones when it comes to the brown neutral tones. They're very, very beautiful. I just feel like they are just gorgeous to blend together, and I just like the overall look. Maybe it's just with my complexion or just the tones that I prefer and that I am drawn to naturally. Anytime I do a look with either side of this palette, or if I mix and match it, I always really loved how the end result, how the look turned out on me. So definitely had to recommend this. But yeah, such a really beautiful palette, definitely nostalgic for me. One of the first palettes I picked up and just really fell in love with and reviewed here on my channel. So if you have been around since I reviewed this on my channel, let me know down below. But it is very beautiful, and also a palette I'm going to be revisiting. I don't think at the time of me posting this video I've done it yet, but I am going to be playing with this palette this month and creating a look, and I'm looking forward to it. It's been a very long time since I've used this palette, but I'm excited to dive back into it. Another fantastic palette, a great option for fall, is the Midas Cosmetics Artistry Volume 2 palette. I think this is one of the ones I put in my top 10 for 2021 because they were still in business before. And Midas Cosmetics, I think, technically still is around. They've rebranded and they're still selling off old inventory from Midas Cosmetics, spelled with a M-I, but they're now Midas, M-Y-D-A-S. So I don't know if this will be coming back with a new name or if it's just gone forever, so I'm just sticking it in here. But this is a really pretty color story when it comes for fall. So if you have this palette in your collection, I remember really enjoying the shimmers and the mattes. The shimmers are of more of those deeper tones, even though this is like a duochrome, but still really pretty, and those deeper tones just kind of lend it to looking very fall-esque in my opinion. So little 6-pan palette, I remember having a lot of fun with it, and yeah, it's just a great fall option. Probably the most OG when it comes to fall theme palettes in my collection. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture palette, another palette I plan to revisit. But yeah, this palette is just, I remember when I first saw it, I was like, that is a me type of palette. It's just such a grungy type of palette. I really like the colors in here, and ever since this palette came out, that was kind of like my benchmark to see if I really like the grungy aspect to a palette. I remember trying so many dupes of this palette after this palette came out just because I was so into these tones. I was wanting to, you know, find them in maybe different formulas that was a little bit easier to work with and whatnot. But it's just such a nice palette. It's got such beautiful tones, especially when we're talking about fall. You got the mustards, you got the greens, you got that dark, rich, like purple burgundy tones in here, a little bit of like a green blue down here, so much depth, the green, the mustards. A great palette, great option for fall, and another palette I'm going to be diving into this month, so I'm excited to revisit it because it has been a long time. I can't remember the last time I used this. I think I used it maybe when the Colourpop at Forest Sight came out, because I think I did a video comparing them and I did one look on each eye. But anyway, a really great option. Oh, speaking of the Colourpop and Raw Beauty Kristi collab, at Forest Sight was the next palette in my pile, but this is also obviously a great option. I, again, did a video comparing the two just because the tones and the colors in this palette I felt like reminded me of that palette, so I was curious to see how they would compare, and I just wanted an excuse to use the Subculture palette. I love being able to reach back and pull older palettes out to use them again against new palettes. But anyway, this palette, just talking about it on its own 2 feet, is a lovely color story, so very beautiful. I love these tones. The artwork in this palette is absolutely beautiful. It is hands down my favorite artwork that Colourpop has ever come out with, packaging and everything. My favorite from them for sure. It's just so beautiful, so well done. Kristi did a great job with it, and then the colors inside are also really pretty. I liked how it was so matte heavy in this palette, not too much on the shimmers, because for me personally, Colourpop shimmers are just like, whatever, they're okay. There really are are only two. This one is like a glitter. But anyway, the colors in it definitely fall, and the quality in this one, I remember being pleasantly surprised that I, for the most part, really enjoyed it. There were a couple shades I remember kind of giving me some issues when it came to blending, but as a whole, not bad. So another great palette. If you have this palette in your collection, great time to pull it out during the fall season. You'll have to let me know if you have any of these palettes that I mentioned in this video. I'll be very curious to hear, since all of these are discontinued. Next is going to be from two little quads from DeDe Signature. One is the Pumpkin Spice palette, obviously sounds pretty fall-esque, and the other is the Passion Fruit. So these are both from DeDe Signatures, and DeDe Signatures is no longer in business. They shut down a couple months ago. You might still be able to find these available on her website, because again, she's shut now, but she is, you know, selling out of her inventory. So maybe you can get them. I haven't checked in a little while, but last time I checked, like a couple weeks ago, they were out of stock. So anyway, these two really do make me think of fall. This is like a bright fall, but still with the orange and purple, you can blend and mesh them together, and you have a really pretty tones, especially with this gold, this liquid gold. It's so very pretty. And then this was like an iridescent type of duochrome. Oh, it was so beautiful as well. Her formulas, when it came to her shimmers, were so special and so beautiful. I really did enjoy them. And then her mattes were also very, very pigmented. They were more of a dry type of formula, which you would think wouldn't lead to a really good quality or like really pretty eye looks. But they always had great pigmentation, so I was always very impressed with them. And then this palette right here, obviously, it's called the Pumpkin Spice. It's got orange and green and a duochrome green, what is this? A green bronze. Very pretty, like a dirty green gold. Oh, so pretty. This one is also blinding. As a whole, great option. So if you have either one of these, I think now is a great time to pull them out and play with them, because in my opinion, they are just definitely palettes in my collection that scream fall, and I had so much fun creating looks with both of these. Next up, do you guys remember this? This is the NYX Grind palette. This palette I'm so curious to reach back for, because it's been ages since I tried this. Why can't I open this? And I feel like I won't be as impressed now that I go back to it. However, my memories, you know, thinking back to this palette, I remember enjoying it so much. And even now looking at it and feeling it, it still feels like amazing and like buttery smooth. The mattes do. I think the shimmers is where I'm going to be like, those aren't too impressive. But the mattes in here, you know, as I'm touching them, they still feel really nice. So I'll be curious to see how I like this palette when I revisit it. But just, you know, thinking back to when I was creating looks with this, and if you're someone who is like super into the very subtle type of shimmers, I think you'll still like this palette, because I think that's the only thing now that I'm looking at it that I'm like, I'm not going to be super impressed with it, is that the shimmers are pretty subtle. Like they're nothing too, definitely not sparkly at all, but even pigmentation, they're pretty like soft and just gentle. Nice like amount of pigmentation. It's not like a, you know, light or transparent, but it's just very, very soft type of shimmer. But anyway, you can't get it anymore, so you have to let me know if you have this palette. Do you still reach for it and whatnot? This, I remember getting this and I was so excited. This was something that reminded me of the Subculture, but a much more affordable version. So I remember being super excited about that and creating just a lot of looks with it, especially during the fall season, because it's a palette that definitely makes me think of fall. I love these type of tones when it comes to fall. If you're like more neutral fall especially, I feel like that's where this shines, because there's no real pops of colors here. It's all very soft and neutral, so great option for fall. Next up is from Raine. This is the Safari Raine palette, and this palette, I remember being so in love with this palette. Look at this color story. This is another palette I really want to revisit, because I just remember absolutely loving the type of looks that I got out of this. I remember I love this color story, especially during the fall season, and the mattes and the shimmer quality in here were just outstanding. They just blew me away. The shimmers were just so smooth and so beautiful on the lid, and the mattes were so smooth as well and so easy to blend. Oh, this is such a nice palette. And obviously, like, the color story I feel like speaks for itself. In my opinion, this is very, very fall-esque. You got those kind of burnt-ish reds and the mustards up here with the green and the kind of blue-green and browns. Gorgeous, gorgeous color story. Another palette that I'm excited to dive back into. Green Valley, I remember, was really pretty green. And I think Lioness was that shade that just really was so impressive, almost like a liquid type of bronze on the lid. Very, very pretty. So this is a fantastic palette. They were very limited edition when this first launched, but I think the following year they brought it back for a limited time. I don't think it's available anymore, but they did bring it back for a little while, which I was so happy about, because I just remember enjoying it so much and feeling so bad for everyone who missed out, because it was a very limited first launch. So I was very happy that they did bring it back for at least 1 or 2 more launches. But if you were able to get your hands on this, let me know if you enjoy, you know, reaching back for it. Did you like the looks that you got got from it. It's just, and the palette also, I think the palette decor is just so beautiful. I love how it, you know, the aspects of the palette that really shines as you turn, so beautiful. Another palette that makes me think of fall and almost got into my top 10 for this year, but didn't because it's discontinued. But this one is the Oden's Eye Hela palette. This is the collaboration with Angelica Nyquist that she did earlier this year. And this palette, maybe not initially, like first looking at it, you're like, wait, fall, but as I was playing with it, the looks that I was getting, you could really get some very fall looks. And especially if you kind of like cover up the pinks. I know pinks aren't super fallish, but if you cover up the pinks, I feel like if you look at the color story that way, it's very fall-esque. And especially with these tones down here, when I would mix and match them with the greens up here, I just love the looks that I got from this, and for me it's very fall-esque, and I just had a great time playing with this. Formula when it comes to Oden's Eye is always spot on, and it's no exception in here. I think only one shade was a little bit too flaky for my preferences, but as a whole they were very smooth and beautiful, and then the mattes are just, as always, so buttery smooth, so pigmented, so easy to blend and mesh together. I had a great time, so I definitely want to include this in my fall palettes that are discontinued. You can't get anymore because you can't pick this up anymore, but it was a fantastic palette. So if you have this in your collection, I would say pull it out and see what type of fall theme looks you can get from this color story. Next up is going to be from Ivette Beauty. This is her Autumn's palette, and this is the first palette I tried from Ivette Beauty. I remember loving just, it's not like super extravagant, the cover of this palette, but it's just so beautiful to me. I love the white with this gorgeous autumn tree. I think it's just so pretty. And then when you opened it, look at this. Autumn tones, but make it like intense and neon and just popping. I had so much fun with this color story. I remember picking it up because I'd never heard of the brand before, but the color story was just like, oh my goodness, it's an all matte palette. It's got such bright, bold colors. I want to see what type of looks I would create with this. So that's why I picked it up and, you know, tried it out. And I wasn't expecting too much because, again, I never heard of the brand, so I didn't know what to expect, but I was blown away with the quality of this palette. It was this beautiful quality, very, very pigmented. Like, you don't have to sit there and build up to get the intensity. They were really easy to blend together, and yeah, I thought it was fantastic. Ivette Beauty is closing down, and this was a, you know, a limited edition release back in 2019, I think is when I first tried it, so it's not around anymore. But if you did pick this up, or if you ever saw a Mercari and picked it up, let me know if you enjoyed this formula too. I really liked it. It was very unique. I feel like I've never seen this all matte color story repeated with other indie brands, so I'm really glad I ended up picking it up because it's a very unique palette in my collection. Like I said, it's an all matte palette. These colors, these tones, I can't really think of a palette in my collection that is a dupe for this color story, and just all the fun looks and all the matte fun looks that I got from it, it's a great one. Another solid fall palette for me is from Juvia's Place, the Tribe palette. This palette, oh, it's such a good palette, such a fantastic palette, and maybe it doesn't scream like obvious fall, but definitely colors that you can get such beautiful fall looks from it. I love this palette. You got popping colors with the bright greens and whatnot, but you still have all this depth and all the tones in here that are very fall-esque in my opinion, that the looks that you get, unless you really stick to like maybe these two with a dark color, maybe not so fallish, maybe a little bit bright, but besides that, like all the other colors, when you create looks with them, such gorgeous, rich, very rich and almost jeweled fall tones, if that makes any sense. So beautiful. This shade especially, absolutely stunning. And yeah, it's just a solid palette. The formula still is good. I've already recorded this video, but you're gonna see it. I can't remember if you're seeing it before or after this video. If it's up already, I'll leave it linked down below, but it's great. I went back into it. This is what, 2019, I think that's when I bought this, or when it came out. It's still great quality, like no issues with the mattes, no issue with the shimmers. I was super impressed. After how long it's been since I've gone into this palette, quality is still there with it. So if you still have this palette in your collection, definitely a good time to get it out. The quality is still there for me. Hopefully it'll still be there for you, and the looks that you get are just so beautiful and very autumnal. Alright, next is going to be Give Me Glow Extra Spicy palette. They did go ahead and discontinue this palette, but if you were able to get it, this is a very red-orange type of fall color story. Maybe it isn't super fall-esque because it is very red and orange in that aspect, but still, when I was creating looks with this, especially when I would kind of mix the orange with it in these red tones, I thought it was very fall, like a bright fall. Definitely, you know, bright kind of peak changing of the leaf season when colors are just so bright and red and orange and whatnot, but still, in my mind, when I was creating looks with this, it definitely did make me think of those fall tones and colors that I enjoy wearing in the fall too. So that's why I want to put this in there. And it's just such a fantastic palette, and I am kind of sad that they discontinued it. However, I do feel like you can kind of get the same looks with this palette in the one other palette that, oh, I'm blanking on it, but it's a bit of a larger palette. I think it has one more row of 3. It's like a 12 pan palette. I forget forget the name of it. I'll put it on the screen. But that palette, I remember I had already had this one already, so I didn't want to get that because I felt like it was a little bit repetitive just with a couple more shades thrown in there. So if you missed out on this palette, that might be a good option to check out because, again, it has those tones of red and orange in it along with other colors. But, you know, just talking about this palette, the extra spicy palette, I had a lot of fun with this palette, and the looks that I created with this palette made me think of autumn, made me think of the fall, so I wanted to mention it in this video. All right, last up, we are almost at the end, y'all. This is BeautyBay's Wilderness palette. This was such a good palette, and I know it has that row of blues, and especially the brighter blue isn't really very autumny, but if you kind of cover it up, I definitely think it's autumny, and if you go even so far as this, I feel like that's a very autumn palette. I like a lot of green in my, you know, autumn palette, so this whole row still qualifies for me. And even honestly with the blue, if you just did this, like, I feel like this blue, this bright blue is the only thing that doesn't make me think of very fall-esque. So if you just cover that up, I think that's a very fall palette in my opinion, and regardless if there's like a few bright tones in there, whatever, but as a whole, this is just such a beautiful palette. It's no longer available, obviously, but I created so many looks with this palette when I tried it. What was it, 2021? I can't even remember when this came out. Isn't that bad? Or was it yeah, I think it was 2021 or 2020. I think it was last year. Anyway, such a great palette. They came out with limited edition. They did bring it back eventually, which I was super glad because it came out super limited edition, and by the time, I think I was one of the first ones to get it when it launched because I was just so into it, and then I don't think they were going to restock it at all, and I didn't realize it was limited edition, and then months later they finally said like, hey, we're going to bring it back for a while, and so they did bring it back for a bit, and I think more people were able to jump on it and get it. So let me know if you were able to pick this up, because I remember when I was creating looks with it, when I was posting videos, I got so many comments of like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I missed that, oh my goodness, I wish they would bring it back. So hopefully at some point, you know, ever since this launched and now you were able to get your hands on it, because it is limited edition as far as I know, and they're not selling it anymore, but it's a solid color story. They did a great job with the color story, and I feel like since then we've seen a lot of this type of color story being launched now, so I think that's really cool to see that. But overall, great palette for fall. All right, so that's gonna do it for my fall palettes that are discontinued. I don't even know what I'm calling this video, honestly, so I'm sorry that's a pretty rough title. Typically, I don't sit down and think about my titles for videos until I'm actually uploading them, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video regardless, and just getting to see all the palettes that, in my opinion, are very fall-esque, but you can't get them anymore. And since I had so many, you guys know I love fall. You know I love the fall tones. Since I had so many, I figured I'd just give it a video all to itself. So if anyone gets annoyed at seeing, you know, people recommend discontinued or no longer available palettes, they can check out my top 10 fall palettes for 2020 and get some inspiration from palettes that are still available. But if you like just revisiting older palettes with me and just, you know, seeing what palettes I still have in my collection that make me think of fall, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. Thank you guys so very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to check me out over on Instagram. I'm LadyKatie92 over there. I post reels, up close, eye pictures, swatches, all that sort of thing. Just some fun content as well. I have fun with reels, sometimes a little too much. But anyway, I'm over on Instagram if you want to check me out. And yeah, with all that said, I'll see you guys very soon in my next video tomorrow. Bye guys.